Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Welcome to another episode of culture content, culture topics. Follow me on Instagram, Jay Doran underscore the culture man, where I put business, leadership, life topics around culture and all these other issues. Today, I'm going to expand on this statistic, which is apparently 92% more likely is a company that has a learning culture to innovate. A company with a learning culture is 92% more likely to innovate as a consequence of having a strong learning culture. First, what is innovation? Innovation is unlearning, it's relearning, it's looking at the past, looking at what we have done, and experimenting in the future. The actual definition from Webster here is the act or process of innovating. Well, that's not very helpful. Transformation, upheaval, revolution, al alteration, change, reorganization, a new method, idea, or product. What does innovate mean? Something new or to a change made to an existing product, idea, or field. Well, let's think about what the purpose of an organization is in the first place. And that's to solve problems of its customers. The customers are exchanging their capital for goods and services. So that in that exchange, the customer's perception and the actual reality, if we're going to use common sense, would be that what they're receiving is worth less to them than what they're giving. And now, how uh, in that, if we agree on that and that foundation, as time passes, what was once useful will in turn be less useful because the world is constantly changing. The world is moving forward in some degree of progression. Things are becoming um, less valuable as time passes on. So we have to actually innovate. We have to innovate to keep up to our competition, to keep up with the times. If learning cultures are 92% more likely to innovate, you could also look at that that you could also infer that that means they're 92% more likely to compete. Because if there's 10 companies competing, there's 10 companies that do either the same thing or something similar within, a small deviation or it's funny. We could be the best company we could be the best business consulting firm on company culture, but we don't. No one knows about us, so we're still losing to those that might be way less effective in the actual fulfillment, but are much more broadly known. So we're competing in awareness. We're not just competing in fulfillment. On the other side of the coin, we could be far less effective in our fulfillment and much more known. And so there's a competition going on, even if it's not in the context of products, of services, of fulfillment. There's a competition. There's 10 companies that either do something similar or appear similar that are actually vastly different, but the consumer doesn't know the difference, and the consumer just has a problem that they're looking to solve, and they're going to be making decisions based on their own opportunity costs, based on their own access to information, based on their own access to resources, based on their own resourcefulness. And it's up to the organization to get in front of them, to communicate in a way where they're understood, to fulfill upon promises given prior to capital being exchanged and expected after capital is exchanged, for the customer to have value beyond what it costs to start and maintain the relationship with the organization. Well, all of this is to say that if we're going to say that a learning culture is 92% more likely to innovate, it's 92% more likely to compete because innovation is a component of competition. It's we are recreating ourselves. We are reinventing ourselves. We are more valuable to our customers that have had a past experience with us than we were when they first started with us. Or we're less valuable because we've been resting on our laurels. We haven't been innovating. We haven't been re-engineering. We haven't been changing. We haven't been evolving. I mean, think about it on a relational level. Um, do you want people in your life that don't make you better. Well, if that's true, oh, I don't want people in my life that make me better. I want people in my life that make me better. Well, then I would say, then you have to look at yourself and say, am I making myself better? Am I actually the person on the other side that my friends are saying, oh, this person doesn't make me better? Well, because you're not making yourself better. Companies have to make themselves better to continually create value and be valuable to their customers. They have to constantly make themselves better. So the question becomes, if 92% of learning cultures are more likely to innovate, and and that also could be substituted for learning cultures 90, I'm sorry, learning cultures are 92% more likely to innovate. They're 92% more likely to innovate. They're 92% more likely to compete. Then we need to figure out, and competition keeps us not only healthy, or alive rather, but healthy and valuable. Without value or perceived value, and I would say they have a relationship. Why would we market what we don't believe in? How about our brand? Our brand is going to be seen, felt, touched. It's also going to manifest naturally as a consequence of customers having having an experience with a product that they're proud of, that they represent, that they share with their friends, that they spread the word. All of this is attached to innovation because this is attached to competition and how a company is standing out in the marketplace versus its consumers. So if I've made the point that innovation and and competing in a value creating way are have a symbiotic relationship, then the question becomes, and if the statistic is true that learning cultures are 92% more likely to create it or to lead to innovation or a company that innovates, well then how do we have a learning culture? I think first we should start with how do we not have a learning culture? We undermine learning culture by those in positions of authority and influence are not learning themselves. We undermine learning through insecurity, through fear, through laziness, through entitlement, through resting on our laurels, through um, the Peter principle. I'm elevated, I'm promoted to a position of my lowest competency because at my highest competency, and this is in organization development, at my highest competency, everyone says, "Oh, he's the best at that position. Let's put him at the next position." Well, in that between that highest at that best position and new at that higher position is being at the top of your field in one position in the old position to where you get promoted to the next position above it. You're the lowest in your field. There's a gap in between that, and that is, are you paying attention? Are you open? Are you responsible? And is the organization providing you the resources for you to be resourceful, to level up your competency, level up your confidence, level up your value at that new title, that new position of rank and file, so that you're not operating at your lowest competency in that new position. You're operating within your best individual competency. And I think this is where the learning comes in. Being a learner is I'm going to the time it takes me to master my new position, my new job description, is I think could have a relationship with the type of person I am. And being a learner means openness, means curiosity, means humility, means innate talent, raw firepower. You could have somebody that has the raw firepower, but doesn't have the character that is humble enough to unlearn what they've learned to become competent in the first place, and then nobody wants to work with them, and they're actually undermining the value of the organization. You could have somebody else that isn't the most talented innately, but is just absolutely gritting their teeth and putting it all on the table, and they're good enough. And it's their example and the modeling of the values that actually gets an exponential return to the company, with other people respecting them and trusting them and seeing what they've done and saying, you know what, I could do better. I could be better. Let's not underestimate the value of modeling values, of modeling constructive behaviors and the impact that that has on a company culture and the impact that has on a team and the excitement and enthusiasm. It's like if you, the listener of this podcast, actually believe that I work, you know, on the things that we talk about here on the show, like reading to think, writing to develop, speaking to let go, listening to hear what's unsaid. If you spend time with me and you see that I do read books, I do work on myself, I do write letters to people I care about, I do write analyses for our client partners, I do interview people to listen to hear what's unsaid. And one of my mentors, someone we've worked with for almost 7 years, called me out a couple weeks ago. The real Brad Lee. He's like, Jay, you haven't been speaking. You haven't been reading, writing, speaking. You stopped speaking. You stopped doing the monologues. And he was right. And that has hurt me. I'm doing more to compensate for that. Because what else can I do to buy back that mistake of pulling back? So like, I'm doing more to compensate for that, to grow and stretch and break. Because I can't be 75% of the things that I talk about. Reading to think, writing to develop, listening to hear what is unsaid, and speak to let go. I have to be all 100% of them as much as I can within my awareness, and then have great people around me that that are not afraid to tell me what they think. Of course, I influence that based on how I treat the people closest to me and how well I listen and how honest I am with them. And so this goes back to the learning culture. How do we actually get that learning culture? I think that comes back to the values of the organization. Even if we have 1,000 organizations that all come up with their own values, it's really the process of becoming clear on what our values are so we can course correct in what they're not, and we can be honest with one another when we're not living them, just like Brad was with me. And that's somebody that, um, you know, uh, that's a customer that I consider a mentor that is telling me, and that's the way it should be. I need to honor them and listen and not get defensive so that I can continue to grow and innovate and evolve. And I'm going to actually benefit from the people that have given me an opportunity to serve them. It, and part of creating a learning culture is having customers that we ask where we can improve, having advisors paid, but we invest in to give us feedback, as well as mentors that are more of a, that generally is a unpaid, that's a relationship that we're pursuing, that we're the one calling, we're the one following up, we're the one proactive, we're trying to serve them and figure out how we can honor them. And companies do this just like people do this. Whether they have 50,000 employees, a million employees, there's that mentor-mentee relationship. There are the rituals that increase the capacity for dialogue or undermine them. There's there are the narratives and the compelling stories that drive these organizations for the people to rise up and be the best version of themselves. I mean, these are the things that I love working in and philosophizing around. And as a firm, we work very deeply to help actualize the story, the language, the symbolism, the rituals, and really leadership, the leadership development, which is broken down reading, writing, listening, speaking, so that founders can become the best version of themselves as executives and managing and leading the people. So if we're going to create a learning culture, it's going to come down to the values, it's going to come down to the people, it's going to come down to the trust and the respect of the organization. It's going to come down to, are you paying attention? Are you bought in on your company? Can you get through the tough times mentally? To get, are the what's the feeling of the team? Are we on the same page? How do we get there? We're not always going to be on the same page. Life is chaotic and crazy and stressful and adversity creating. But I think so in more simple terms, if learning is a part of competing, because learning cultures are 92% more likely to innovate. Innovation is part of competing and creating value, which creates profits and reinvestment and higher valuations and more job creation and all these amazing things. Then how do we learn? We have a learning culture and we have management that's paying attention. They're bought in. They know what they're doing. They know what they don't know, and they're working on bridging the gap between what they know they don't know, which helps them get closer to what they don't know that's forever distant. And it takes being bought in, it takes and being all in, which is a challenge to values. And mentors help with that, advisors help with that, education helps with that. The talent and even more deeply, the interpersonal relationships of the people, what that makeup is of those that manage and run organizations has a place in that. The more integrated we are as an individual in our marriages or our life partnerships and our familial backgrounds and our community, all of in our nation state, all of that actually influences the quality and the capacity to lead. So, which affects the learning culture in an organization. Um, Follow me at Jay Doran _ the Culture Man on Instagram. Leave us a review at the Culture Matters Podcast, and I will see you next.